Today I messed up buying a 23&Me kit assuming my history is boring. My TIFU actually started 3 days ago, but background first. My dad was 56 and my mom was 46 when me and my twin sister were born. My dad died in 2007 when my twin sister and I were 12. He had been a heavy drinker and smoker since he was 10, passing at 69 following decades of very poor health, so it was mostly a relief when he died. My mom and dad were married since 1973 and tried for many years to have children until they had my sister and I in 1994. My mom only has us, but my dad had a son from a prior marriage who is about 30 years older than us, who I've met several times, but we aren't close due to the age difference. He also had 2 daughters from another prior marriage that I had never met. I only know they live in California and first names. They also did not speak to my dad and didn't attend his funeral. As I've gotten older and had kids of my own, I became more curious about my dad's family. I asked my mom to no avail. She said she had no idea about why the girls didn't speak to my dad. She said she also didn't know how to contact them. I ordered a 23&Me kit to hopefully find my half-sisters and get some answers. Also, the idea of possibly being 1% black or Asian would have been cool. I'm white as can be. So I order the kit and 3 weeks later get my results. Unfortunately, I'm not any shocking ethnicity. 61.2% British actually, along with 20.7% French/German and other European makeup. What is surprising though is that I found 4 half-sisters. 2 more than I thought. My dad was not a picture of moralism, so it doesn't surprise me he had some unclaimed kids running around. So, excitedly, I click to see the names. Oddly, none of the names match my half-sisters I'm looking for. This means I have 6 half-sisters. Wow, dad was kind of a whore, but this is still exciting. My twin and I immediately messaged them on the site. The first to reply we'll call Mary. She says she was born via IVF in 1992 in North Carolina. Mary also said the donor was a med student. Well, my mom is adamant my dad didn't donate to sperm banks and that he didn't live in the state she's from. So I'm thinking poor Mary doesn't know her mom is lying to her about an affair she had with my dad. I felt terrible for my mom, as well as this would definitely mean he cheated on my mom. Like I said, my dad was scummy. I just tell Mary that our father was actually in construction his whole life, so he or the agency was lying about med school. He dropped out in 7th grade. I sent her some pictures of my dad and my twin and I from childhood. We laugh about how much we look alike and say we could even be triplets. Later that evening, I get another message from another half-sister we'll call Tiffany. Tiffany says she was also conceived via IVF in 1993 in Pennsylvania. All she knows is her dad has blonde hair and green eyes and was a med student. I'm honestly so happy to see another IVF because this confirms my dad did use sperm banks and just didn't tell my mom, which was messy, but better than an affair. I sent Tiffany pictures of my dad and tell her about him, and that's it. Then comes last night. I'm shopping at Ikea with my friends, relaying this soap opera story to them. I'm telling them my theory about these sperm banks lying to their customers to get better prices. Telling people they're getting a blonde hair green-eyed med student when in reality they are getting a brown hair brown-eyed sheetrock worker. It's at this moment my friend Miranda said you and your twin have blonde hair and green eyes. What if your dad isn't your dad and your mom also used IVF? At first I laughingly entertained the idea that it would make sense for my mom to need IVF, because that makes way more sense than suddenly becoming pregnant at 46 and 56. I quickly realized holy shit, that actually does make sense. Then came the obvious thought to probably everyone but me: how could a 55-year-old alcoholic chain smoker pass for a med student? It would have been 25 years since he could believably look under 35. Unless they somehow had his sperm in storage for 30 years before using it, and the sperm banks in different states use the same lie about med school, it didn't seem likely. I also have type 1 diabetes and have no family history at all. Every doctor I've had tells me how unlucky I am, because it is usually in the family tree and my chances of getting it were very low. I'm currently looking at my half-brother's pictures, and he looks just like my dad but nothing like my sister and I. Not even close. My mom has had a migraine throwing up the past 2 days since discussing this, but I assumed it was a coincidence. Now I'm thinking nerves. I, 17 male, just found out my sister, 30 female, is actually my biological mother. I'm a 17-year-old guy. I grew up in a big family. I have 5 siblings, a sister, 30, brother, 29, brother, 27, sister, 24, and sister 22, and myself, 17. I always realized there was a gap between me and the rest of them. The youngest of them was 5 years older than me, which is not that much older, but it was the biggest gap between 2 siblings. I had always figured that I was an accident, or unplanned, that my parents were done having kids after my last sister, but then I came along and was completely unplanned, hence the big gap. Being the youngest, even though I felt distant from the rest of them, I felt spoiled all the time. The way they treated me was how you would expect they would treat the youngest. They nurtured me, and I was often the center of attention. I did like it. I wouldn't get as much respect, but I would get priority from my siblings over each other in many things. I was the cute one. I was the precious one. I was the one they always wanted to side with them when they'd have an argument with each other. My oldest sister, Hannah, always took care of me the best. I always saw her as a mother figure, never knowing she was actually my mother. She always spent the most time with me out of all my brothers and sisters, took care of me the best, and was often there for me when my mom wasn't. My parents were much older than me, and I had always felt more distant from them than from my siblings. As I said, Hannah was in many ways a mother figure towards me in the way that our mother was lacking. When my father passed away, it was probably the worst part of my life. I was really young, around 8 years old. I did not take it well at all. I cried for weeks. I went crazy. I threw fits at people. I reacted poorly and negatively towards everyone. I know my siblings were all going through just as bad a period, but I made it about me. I didn't even consider them or what they would have been going through emotionally, despite them being there constantly for me. And recently the same thing happened with mom. It hit me just as hard, if not harder. She'd been sick for a long time and slowly getting worse. Even though I'd lost one parent already and am older, I wasn't at all ready for it when it hit me. It was after this that Hannah told me the truth. She sat me down and braced me that what she was about to tell me would be a shock. She knew that we were all still recovering from our mother's passing, but a few weeks had passed, and she felt it was enough time to wait before coming out with the truth. She said she had always wanted to tell me, and only now could she finally. When she was 13, as many stupid kids do, she had unprotected sex with a boy, and she had gotten pregnant. And that child was me. At the time her parents had wanted her to give the baby away for adoption, but she was unshakable and wanted to keep her child. She completely refused to give me, her son, away. They eventually agreed to keep me and would raise me in their household, but with her parents as the guardians, and I would grow up thinking they were my real parents. Apparently, some of my older siblings also knew, but they never mentioned it. In fact, they are my aunts and uncles. My mother had made Hannah swear she would never tell me. When mom got sick, Hannah had approached her and pleaded with her to relieve her of this burden, because she really wanted to tell me. My mother had agreed that she could tell me only after some time passed after her death. She wanted to die as my mother, not grandmother. Hannah said all my life she had wanted to tell me, but had sworn not to. There were many times where she felt like she had to tell me, but had held herself back. Now, she was finally glad she was able to tell me the truth she had always wanted to, that I'm her son. I was taken back completely. I had no idea how to react. In some strange mysterious way, I kind of had always seen her in a more motherly light than my actual mother. The level of reliance and nurture that was there was much more of a maternal relationship than a fraternal one. Hannah told me, now that I knew, she can finally be my mother openly. I don't know how to feel about that. I just lost my mother, but now I already have a new one, who is in fact my real one. Hannah is 30 and I'm 17, and in my mom's will, she had given custody over me for the last year, before I turn 18 to Hannah. Hannah is married, and has children, in fact, a boy and a girl, 6 and 5. Her husband is 33, I guess he's now my stepdad. I had no idea how to respond. She said she finally had the chance now to raise me as her son, the way it was always meant to be. I told her I couldn't refer to her as mom, it wouldn't feel natural, and I just wasn't ready yet, so I'll keep calling her Hannah, but I'm really glad she told me the truth. I don't blame her for hiding it this long, it wasn't her fault. But I'm glad I now know. I went and spoke with my nephew and niece, in reality my half brother and half sister, and me and Hannah explained to them the reality. They seemed to understand, as best they could. It kind of shocked them as well, but not nearly as much as it did me. I sat down with them. I hugged them. I kissed them. I cried. They asked me why I was crying. I said I don't know. Telling my half brother and half sister how we were really related moved me much more than it did them. I know now for certain I will always be much closer to them and try to be a more present force in their lives. I spoke with Hannah's husband. He shook my hand and told me he was proud of me. He gave me a hug and told me that he wants to be the main man in my life and would always be there, and I could come to him whenever I needed anything. I could tell he was trying to place himself as a father figure towards me, but I don't know if I can accept that. He's not my father, just happens to be the husband of my biological mother, and does not even have any blood relation to me. He's not even that much older, neither is Hannah. It's weird to see them as parents in any way. Hannah is really prepared to make this an actual thing. Her my mother, me her son. I was sitting with her family on the couch when she told me they were ready to be my full family, and she wanted it that way. She hugged me and didn't let go for so long. I can't imagine what it must have felt like to her. Finally getting her son back, the son she had been forced to hide from for so long. She said she was now glad more than ever that she had kept me when I was born and was absent. She asked me why I was being so quiet and had not said much, but she understood why this would be something really heavy to come to grips with. I didn't like how her husband was there. I never really identified with him, and I didn't see why he needed to be present for this revelation. I told her I would like to speak with her privately elsewhere, so we went elsewhere in the house. She told me I know this is very heavy for you. If you want to be left alone, I understand. If you just want to continue our relationship the way it was before, I understand. But you have to know, you do have a mother still, and she loves you, and she will always be there for you. Never ever feel like you don't have a home to go to. She then hugged me, and I couldn't hold back my tears anymore. I buried my face against her chest and let out all the tears. She held my head and hushed me, telling me it would all be okay. She said I'm finally at my real home, and I had nothing to be afraid of. But I'm afraid. I don't know where I belong. I have so many fears and apprehensions. I just lost the only mother I had ever known. I don't know if I can ever accept a second one. But part of it feels right, like she said, that things are finally corrected. Personally, I just wish I had known the truth earlier. But I always felt a stronger connection with her than with any of my other siblings. She was always my biological mother. Nothing can change that. But does that make her my real mother? Can I accept her as that? Can I accept this new home as she calls it? Can I accept this new family? I don't even know what real mother means. Maybe I'm seeing things I'm not meant to see. Maybe I'm so devastated and distraught from the death of my mother, I'm willing to give the mantelpiece of mother over to Hannah, just to lessen the blow of losing a mother. So I tell myself I still have one. Even if biological mother does not equal real mother, she definitely wants to take on the role of the real mother. And I do have 1 year left before I'm an adult, so she's effectively my guardian and parent until then. TLDR, grew up youngest in a family of 6. Father passed away when I was young. Mother recently passed away. Found out oldest sister is biological mother. Thank you so much for your kind and warm replies, everyone. Reading these really moved me to tears. You are all amazing people. I will try to post again sometime to let you all know how everything is going. I tried to read most of the responses and write replies, but there are so many. Thank you all very much for being lovely people.